Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. And I was thinking about it, and no spoilers in the comments, but I think our current Among Us imposter is Aunt Rosa. I think Aunt Rosa, during that nap, was possessed by Beatrice, and then either dressed up like Beatrice, or Beatrice used illusion magic to make her own mother, Maria's own mother, look like Beatrice and trick Maria into thinking that there really is a Beatrice, or in terms of one that's walking around. However, and I think then Aunt Rosa pretended to be dead or used a fake body. Heck, it could be that the body, one of the bodies, was someone else. But, after all, we don't know if anyone else in the family has the polydactyl issue. But I think Aunt Rosa was either pretending to be dead or used a fake body. I think the nausea in this game is Aunt Rosa, though I think she's either being possessed or manipulated by Beatrice. And heck, I even think it's quite possible that there is no illusion magic, and Maria certainly could see that it was her own mother that was handing her the letter from Beatrice, claiming to be Beatrice. However, Maria would have noticed that her mother was being possessed, and Beatrice would have explained to her that, hey, it's going to look like your mom's dead, but she's not actually dead. But I'm possessing your mother's body, and I'm going to be running around stabbing people to death in your mother's body, and committing all of these murders which means the person that Cannon confronted in the boiler room was Aunt Rosa, albeit being possessed. I don't think Aunt Rosa is more than likely even aware. If anything, she's probably in a bit of a coma. If anything, compare it to the Goa'uld in Stargate, the sci-fi show. In which case, maybe Aunt Rosa is aware of and can see and hear and feel everything, but is a prisoner in her own body, unable to do or say anything she wants to, but she's just along for the ride, fully aware of everything happening, but not in control of her own body. And it could be that Beatrice could have basically threatened Maria, saying, hey, you're going to go along with me, and as long as you're on my side, I'll return your mother to you. But if you fail me in terms of working with me and being absolutely clear that there is a Beatrice out there, you're not getting your mother's body back, at least not alive. But as long as you obey me, I'll give you back the hostage that is your mother. Also, it's quite possible that Maria is perhaps a bit of a Stockholm Syndrome thing herself. After all, she's probably aware that the gun that Natsui has wouldn't be able to either, one, kill Beatrice, and two, if it's possessing her mother, then Natsui shooting the shotgun will just, kill Aunt Rosa, at which point Maria's mom would die for real. The other thing being is this, that even if there's a situation where she knows her mom's already going to die no matter what, but it could be that she's like, hey, everybody's going to die, but if I play along with Beatrice, I'll get my mom back, and me and my mom will both survive. But if I don't, not only will mom die, but Beatrice will kill me too. which means the only way to, as long as I obey Beatrice, everything will be okay. So it could be that by the time she even delivered that letter, the first one, that Maria was already quite traumatized, and the lack of emotional sensitivity could be just her having a mental breakdown. Genji-san didn't answer. Did he remain silent despite his knowledge, or did he know nothing at all? Still, I had a good guess. The ghost story of the witch Beatrice had long been deified among the servants. He had probably been very close to grandfather and his occult hobbies, so there was a good chance that he'd been indoctrinated with even weirder things and had increasingly come to deify the witch as grandfather's most trusted servant. He who had sworn loyalty to him. He might be the most influenced by the illusion of the witch that grandfather had created. So there was only one reason for Genji-san to remain silent. He could speak, but it would definitely cause a backlash, so it would be better if he kept his mouth shut, and it wasn't like we'd believe him anyway. Something along those lines. A short while ago, Maria had been more than willing to speak bluntly and unrestrainedly, and that had earned her a scuffle with Jessica. It was natural for Genji-san to keep his silence. Was she father's concubine? His concubine? That could be possible. For ordinary poor people, polygamy isn't only viewed negatively from a moral perspective, it's also unmaintainable financial situation. But that isn't the case for the very rich. It's possible for them to have another lover in addition to their real wife. We can't deny the possibility that grandfather had another woman in his life besides grandmother. Maybe when grandmother was alive, I hear she was pretty sure of it. She thought he was cheating on her. I always figured she meant a witch that grandfather had imagined up, but now this is getting really interesting. You told me, didn't you, Genji-san? You said Beatrice has been working for grandfather since before the mansion was finished. Are any of us actually descended from her? I heard that the construction of the mansion was completed in Showa 27, 1952. That'd mean this person called Beatrice was in a relationship with grandfather since at least 30 years ago. This game takes place in 1986. I wasn't even born then. Also, technically, Higurashi takes place, at least the main part of the story, in 1983. Could that concubine of 30 years ago, or maybe a relative, or hidden child with that person, hold some kind of grudge and be planning revenge? I see, this is starting to sound just like your standard Western mansion mystery. It's a filthy topic, but the easiest line of reasoning to accept. What do you say, Genji? I believe the master was indeed in love. Those feelings were certainly stronger than what he felt for his late wife. Who is this person called Beatrice, and what's she doing now? Killing everybody. I have heard that she passed away before the mansion was completed. She's already dead? She's a ghost. Yes. The master was deeply stricken by grief, and he devoted himself to the art of black magic as a means to revive her. The master loved Beatrice-sama from the bottom of his heart. It was that madness which drove him to do all that you see here. As Genji-san said this, he spread his arms as though asking us to look at this room filled with the signs of grandfather's madness. We were all at a loss for words. Normally, black magic seems like it'd just be creepy, and it's really hard to imagine why someone might be so enraptured by it. Since Kinzo was just an eccentric, who had restored the Ushiromiya family amidst his madness, nobody had tried to understand him. The only thing on Grandfather's mind had been the loss of a beloved woman. Do you guys say beloved or beloved? And his inescapable sorrow. Earlier, this room had seemed creepy, but in an instant it changed into something we could understand completely. The creepy books, the magic circles, the medicine, all of it. It all existed simply because he wanted to revive the face of a single woman who had left this world over 30 years ago. The master only told me about Beatrice Sama's story once, when he was very drunk, although I have forgotten the details. It was a deep, deep love, enough to make a woman like me jealous. When Kenzo-san succeeded the headship of the Ushiromiya family, his marriage to his late wife had already been decided by the few surviving family elders, so he was forced into a marriage with some woman who would benefit the Ushiromiya family. That is correct. Kenzo-san was installed as the head who would revive the family and had to bear the entirety of that heavy responsibility. I do not pretend to know the details of when or where Kenzo-san first met Beatrice. By the way, we're ever going to ask, are any of us actually descended from Beatrice? I guess it'd be rude to say any more than that. Basically, is there a possibility that Kraus, or Rudolph, or Aunt Rosa, or Ava were not born from the grandmother that everyone is familiar with? Or that, even if they all are born from the grandmother we're all familiar with, did Beatrice have any children by Kenzo? That was when Grandfather truly fell in love for the first time. Just how deep was his affection for her? That was easy to see just by looking around us. This room was covered with piles upon piles of things having to do with black magic, and Grandfather spent every day shut in here, immersed in his research and isolated from the outside world, never regretting 1 minute of it. You couldn't help but recognize the depths of Grandfather's love for Beatrice. I wonder if she actually reciprocated, actually felt anything actually akin to love for him. I had it all wrong, Genji-san. What do you mean by that? I always thought that maybe you servants believed blindly in the witch because you'd gotten brainwashed by Grandfather and his creepy black magic stuff. But that's not how it was, right? Right? Had they been soothing Grandfather's tortured heart, acting as though Beatrice's soul at least had been restored, and existed inside this mansion, though Genji-san closed his eyes, wearing the expression of one remembering the distant past, he said nothing further. He probably felt that making such a confession would be the worst sort of betrayal against his one and only master, even though that master was already dead. Beatrice has revived as a witch, and exists in the mansion even now. Genji had said this, and had believed it, had made people believe it, and would follow through with that decision to the grave. This might have been the last service he could offer up to his master. The legend of the witch, the mysterious tale of Rakanjima that was still whispered of amongst the servants. Its true nature was a sad lie. No. It was an act of kindness towards Grandfather, who had lost the person he loved above all else. I remember denying the witch's existence in front of Father on multiple occasions. Now I finally understand how much that must have wounded him. Right now I can understand very well. If I thought I could revive Shannon using black magic, I'd immediately become the next owner of this room and start researching. Aniki, another strand of tears dripped from George's eyes. Maybe his tears were infectious. Tears rose to Jessica's eyes, too, and she sniffled. Beatrice has said it. Very soon she will be able to revive people. You'll be able to meet them, she said. Very soon the door to the Golden Land will be opened. In the Promised Land, that glitters gold, the souls of all the dead will be resurrected along with the love that has been lost. Then I will sleep in a world of peacefulness for all time. Doesn't that only happen if somebody wins the clause? In the situation that nobody solves the riddle, doesn't everyone just stay dead for all eternity? And Beatrice laughs about it? Like, isn't that what happens? I mean, if she's vindictive enough to attack someone for saying bad things about her, then wouldn't that be how that would work? Did she say that? The Beatrice who gave you the letter? You don't believe, do you? Again, I'm not questioning whether this person said this to you or that someone saying their Beatrice gave the letter to you. I'm questioning whether or not this Beatrice was been sincere, or if they were lying to you. If only grandfather were here, I'm sure he'd be happy. I'm sure he'd be jumping for joy now that Beatrice is about to be revived. In that case, I believe, if grandfather gave up half of his life for this research, trying to resurrect the soul of the woman he loved and spending the rest of his life believing, I'll believe too. Here's the thing. Is it a good soul if it's going around stabbing everyone? Battler? When you love a single woman for so long, the people around you catch on to it and it becomes the truth. Maybe you could say they're just being polite for the sake of your feelings. But right here, now, I'd like to call that magic. It isn't just being polite. It really is magic. She's a witch. It looks like nobody can see Beatrice after all. She's not in the room with us. Did we let her in when we opened the door? Some time passed. As we listened to the sound of the rain, we considered what kind of love and madness must have possessed the owner of this room, as he spent half of his life here. If you ask me as a woman, then while I'd like to be understanding of father's feelings of true love, it did leave mother in an awkward position. Haha, I agree. Cheating is cheating. No way to make it pretty. Yeah, that's right. I mean, weren't you upset about your dad doing that stuff to your mom? And then, of course, you know, when your mom died and you didn't seem to really grieve about that and just immediately moved on. Like, it'd be like having a wedding on top of her fucking funeral. Like, you gotta at least wait maybe a couple months? Yeah, that's right. Gotta feel sorry for grandmother. So, have there been any rumors about a child between Beatrice and grandfather? The keyword Beatrice has been hidden in every corner of this case, so it's natural to suspect some relative of hers. No, I have not heard of anything like that. If there was one, a memento of his most beloved person, he surely would have given them all of his affection. Since he ended up immersing himself in the black magic instead, maybe we should assume that there was no such child. Come to think of it, that reminds me of a rumor I heard. You know it, right? That story about how grandfather heavily supported an orphanage called the Fukuin House. Enough of that! Are the orphans actually... Does that mean Shannon and Cannon are actually descended from grandfather? That is nothing more than slander which would desecrate father. Tell us, Aunt Natsui. I think even you'd agree that this is no time to hide things from each other. It's a worthless story. Father made massive donations to an orphanage and had the orphans employed as servants at the head family to give them some on-the-job experience. The story in question is simply some drivel spread by fools who claim that father was using those orphans for some filthy hobby. You mean like human sacrifice? For a while, some guys even said he was collecting human sacrifices for his black magic, and he really is doing weird experiments and ceremonies in this room all the time, so I half believed it myself. And these servants who came from the Fukuen house are... There are several of them, but Shannon and Cannon were the two scheduled during the family conference shift. To resurrect Beatrice, he brought in servants from an orphanage as human sacrifices. After all, everyone Grandfather selected as a servant was young, about the same age as Shannon or Cannon-kun. I was sure of it because Grandfather had some bizarre hobby. Jessica, mind your words! When Aunt Natsui scolded her, the atmosphere instantly went sour, and everyone fell silent, quiet. However, something was tugging at the back of my mind. Sacrifices. Sacrifices. Human sacrifices brought over from an orphanage. What is it? Freaky words like sacrifices don't pop up often, and yet I've seen or heard that word recently. Some part of my memory is tugging at me. Hey, Beatrice? What do you know? I had arrived in front of the portrait of Beatrice. It wasn't as massive as the one in the entrance hall. But that portrait, which must have been drawn by some famous painter, was still just as intimidating in this smaller size. Below it, just like the entrance hall, was the epitaph that supposedly hinted at the location of the hidden gold. Ah! Sacrifices, here. What the hell, Battler? You're creeping me out. 6 sacrifices. Both of my eyes were as wide as plates. Everything's been predicted right here from the very beginning. Everyone crowded around, and the same expression of shock rose to all of our faces. That's right. It's right there in the epitaph. On the first twilight offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. There's no doubt. 6 people died in the beginning, and even on the shutter, where the magic circle was drawn, no, where the Hebrew was written, it mentioned the offering of sacrifices. Ooh, I've been saying that from the beginning. That's right, Maria said it right at the start, right after we found the 6 bodies. When Maria was in the parlor watching TV, she said it. Ooh, the culprit isn't human. It's just the sacrifices chosen by the key. This has nothing to do with the location of the hidden gold. It's the instructions for a resurrection ceremony using black magic or something. After all, this epitaph requires a large number of deaths. It sure does. Even reading through it quickly, there'd be 6 plus 2 plus 5. 13 people who must die. How many people are normally on this island? It changes depending on the shifts for the servants, but there's Father, my husband, Jessica and me, and 2 or 3 servants. Today and yesterday there were 5 of them, but there aren't normally that many. Which means that normally there wouldn't be enough sacrifices to carry out this ceremony. No, wait. There's that rumor that Grandfather was collecting servants from an orphanage to be used as sacrifices in some creepy ceremony. So what does this mean? He increased the number of servants to increase the number of sacrifices and waited for the annual family conference when even more people would gather? Isn't now the only time of year this ceremony could be held? When Jessica screamed this, Maria broke out in that creepy laugh, looking truly pleased. Haven't you ever heard of people making bets to test their fate? Like throwing a sandal and saying that if it lands right side up, tomorrow will be sunny, or saying that tomorrow will be a good day if a coin lands heads up. There are many little superstitions like that. Sometimes when your luck is down and you get bored and you roll the dice and get 3 6s, you want to believe it's a portent of some miracle. When flipping a sandal, you have at worst a 50% chance. Even if you get it right sides up, it's not worth much. But if you carelessly roll 3 dice, and they all come up to 6, you might think that's a small miracle. Magic works the same way. You must pray earnestly for an extremely unlikely result. Then the feelings from all those stored up prayers gain magical power and become incarnate. The magic that Grandfather was trying to perform was probably like that. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly that concept of human belief. Either one, manifesting a spirit that didn't normally exist, or giving power to one that does exist but normally would have less power. The key randomly selected sacrifices in a lottery. So, to reduce the chance that he himself was selected, he chose the day with the greatest number of people on the island to carry out the ceremony. Ridiculous! Are you saying that this entire situation was caused by a mere ceremony for some bizarre magic? Natsui yelled. She couldn't quell the fear that a scorpion charm might be the only reason she was still safe. If I hadn't received that charm from Jessica and hung it from my doorknob, would I have been killed, mixed in along with those 6? And the strangest part is, even though I hung the charm from the inside of my door, they couldn't get through that door. The culprit noticed the charm from outside the door and gave up trying to open it. A human couldn't have perceived that. A charm meant to stop something that was not human had done exactly that. Impossible. Impossible, impossible. But Natsui-san. The epitaph certainly does continue to fit even after that. On the second twilight, those who remain shall tear apart the 2 who are close. Could this be talking about Eva-sama and Hideyoshi-sama? But painful as it may be, we must reach that conclusion. And after the culprit killed them, they left the words from the third twilight in a letter there. That's right. After carrying out the second twilight, they left the third twilight in that place. The third twilight was, just like on Natsui just read. On the third twilight, those who remain shall praise my noble name. Ah, if you read it this way, it just keeps going on, doesn't it? On the fourth twilight, gouge the head and kill. Gouge the head and kill. George and Niki's parents were killed with those demon's ice picks gouged into their heads, but if they were the second twilight, someone else must have been gouged in the head. That's Grandfather. He was burned in the incinerator, and our eyes were so drawn to that part that we didn't notice. But his forehead, no, his head had been gouged. Grandfather was the victim of the fourth twilight. The then Cannon-kun was. On the fifth twilight, gouge the chest and kill. We thought Cannon-kun's case was an unexpected encounter with the culprit, but that's wrong. From the beginning, they planned to lure someone out alone and drive something through their chest. If the culprit has followed the epitaph this far, does that mean 3 people still have to die? On the sixth twilight, gouge the stomach and kill. On the seventh twilight, gouge the knee and kill. On the eighth twilight, gouge the leg and kill. Yes, you could read it that way. Eep. Well, I wonder about that. After those 3 die, it reaches the ninth twilight. Take a look. On the ninth twilight, the witch shall revive, and none shall be left alive. We're all gonna be killed by Beatrice? I don't get it. Wouldn't that mean everyone dies no matter how many people there are? What was Grandfather after? Doesn't this mean the ceremony would kill him too, no matter what? It's okay if no one's left alive. On the 10th twilight, we finally arrive at the Golden Land. On the 10th twilight, at Journey's End, you shall attain to the power of the Golden Land's treasures once, and for the last time. The witch shall praise the wise and bestow 4 treasures. But isn't that only if we solve the riddle? Which means if no one solves the riddle, everyone dies for keeps. Grandfather wasn't afraid of dying. Look at the second and third of the 4th treasures. One shall be the resurrection of all the dead souls. One shall be the resurrection of the love that was lost. So grandfather believed he would eventually be revived, even if he died partway through the ceremony. Ridiculous! That's insane! When you die, it's over, right? The dead don't come back to life. Isn't that a miracle humanity's been chasing after for thousands of years and still hasn't accomplished? So, is this what it means? Something like you'll be able to meet them in the afterlife where they'll be restored? If what you're saying now is right, would that mean that grandfather whose remaining life is slim and who's been driven mad by love is committing suicide? No, a massive forced group suicide? Genji, is such a thing possible? Look at the books behind you. I don't know. The Master is a man who sometimes has the wisdom to see 1,000 years into the future. That reminds me of Overlord when Ainz said that to Demiurge. However, there are times when that appears to be nothing more than madness to commoners such as myself. Okay, should we take that for a yes? What do you say, Kumasawa-san? I don't know anything. That's right, I don't know. Do you think I would be on this island today if I did know? I would have faked an illness or done anything to take the day off. That's right. What about your opinion, Dr. Nanjo? You've been grandfather's friend for many years. I feel the same as Genji-san. Kinzo-san was a man who far surpassed ordinary people. I've even felt a sort of inhuman power from him at times. Even I don't know what Kinzo-san was thinking when he wrote that epitaph. All we can say is that even if Father did write this script, someone else is carrying it out. That's right. At the very least, there is another culprit who attacked Grandfather and Canon-kun. Furthermore, that person is still continuing the crimes, just as the epitaph says. The letter in the beginning that we didn't think deeply about. What was it that was written there? We thought back to the recitation of the letter last night. Beatrice had proclaimed something inside it. She had proclaimed that, according to her contract with Kinzo, she would collect everything of the Ushiromiya family as interest. But then she had also revealed a special clause. If someone discovered the location of the gold Grandfather had hidden, that right would be lost. When the letter was read, Grandfather was still alive, but at that time it had already been sealed wax by the head's ring, which meant Grandfather had handed the ring over to Beatrice while he was still alive. If we take a straightforward approach, maybe we should assume Beatrice is carrying out that strange contract, with Grandfather guaranteeing her that right. In other words, this was the same as saying Grandfather knew of and approved of the contents of that letter. In other words, it's basically a joint message from Beatrice and Grandfather, telling us that Beatrice will start collecting the interest if we don't solve the riddle. In other words, Grandfather and Beatrice were demanding that we try and solve the riddle of the epitaph, and if we couldn't, they were saying that the massacre would be carried out according to the epitaph. What does that mean? What do they want? I don't have a clue what it means. Look, another letter from Beatrice. Huh? What did you say? Maria was pointing at the top of the table, where the canned food everyone had been eating just now still lay. A Western envelope from Beatrice certainly was sitting there. But so what? So does it mean that, 1, Beatrice put this letter in here for Grandfather, or that this letter was put here in anticipation of us? Or both? What in the... Or was this letter not here when we came in? Which means we're not alone. Which also means that either Beatrice is somehow in here and she is actually the reincarnation of Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid, or one of the people in this room brought in this letter with them, and at some point, very, very discreetly, placed it there while no one was looking. What in the... Aunt Natsui let out an hysterical cry, looking between her own hand and the table, because the envelope she had just opened was still grasped in her hand. So why is there still an envelope on the table? What the hell? What's going on, Maria? Where did that envelope come from? Just now I looked, and it was lying there. Ooh. I don't know anything. This isn't funny. There's only 8 of us here. There's no way some 9th person snuck in. There wasn't enough time during the few seconds that we gathered around the portrait, right? Unless they were hiding under the bed. Get back! All of you! Back against the wall! Natsui was pointing the rifle at Genji and the others, bellowing at them. Genji-san was overpowered, his face looking like he didn't have a clue what was going on. I'm curious what's in the letter, though. But this music is really awesome. Of course, I felt the same, but a few moments later I reached the same conclusion Natsui had. Until just a few seconds ago, there had been no letter like this on the table, and nobody entered this room. That means someone among us placed it there during the few seconds when everyone was looking away, preoccupied with the portrait. Battler-kun, open that envelope and read what's inside. I'm glad you trust me. So sure. It actually makes me feel warm and fun. I just want a hug. Apparently it's not hard to make me happy. Just give me a hug. Though, I'd want more hugs. I think I'd want at least 20 hugs a day. Minimum. And each one should last 20 seconds. So sure, I picked it up. It was still sealed with wax. Even though disturbing its contents, I realized this was, as yet, unopened envelope, an unknown envelope. Without relying on a paper knife, I tore it open and pulled out the letter inside. The contents were as followed. Are you enjoying the riddle of Kinzo-sama's epitaph? As you are all probably aware, you have very little time remaining. Please abandon any naive hopes of escaping after the storm passes. This game can only end with my victory or yours. When time runs out, I will win by default. There will be no ties. Make sure that you do not misunderstand your current situation. That's what it says. It isn't clear who put this letter there. However, I have been able to narrow down the list of suspects. It's you all. But madam, that's just too horrible. Just before I moved toward the portrait, I set a can of food down here. At that time, there definitely wasn't anything as strange as this letter there. And at that time, Jessica, George-kun, and Battler-kun were already in front of the portrait, and they didn't leave the spot in front of the portrait until the letter appeared. So the person who set that letter down is one of you 4. Beatrice is here. Ooh, we aren't Beatrice. Beatrice exists. Silence! I don't know whether I should suspect one of you or all of you, but without a doubt at least one among you is the culprit. That's right. There can't be a 19th person. Yeah, but here's the thing. I still think it's Aunt Rosa. Or possibly even Goda. Or both. Can Beatrice possess dead corpses after they're dead? Guys, I had a weird thought. If we make sentient AI, and they're like robots and stuff, and actual like legitimate fucking androids, can an android be autistic? Can an android, can an AI have ADHD? Can robots have schizophrenia? Or depression? But more importantly is this. There are so many scary ghost stories, heck, the number of creepypastas even are innumerable that talk about the idea of the possession of dolls. Heck, there are many, many old stories of golems, of the ancient concept of a robot, usually with clockwork or even just animated clay. But the concept of a robot or AI, and not even of making a golem, that is possessed, but I mean actually making something that was not alive before. It's a story as old as time. Heck, one could even compare it to the beginning of Genesis when God created Adam. The very way he describes it is the same. Heck, if one could wonder the concept of why did God create humanity? Well, wouldn't it be any different than making AI? You're making robots that can think. Isn't that what a human is? Isn't that kind of what an angel is? They're beings that weren't sentient or exist before, that were made into existence. Whether or not we're talking about something made of flesh and blood, and bones, and neurons, like a human, or metal and oil, and circuitry, and electricity, like a robot, or even whatever one would consider the equivalent if you were to describe the existence of ghosts or angels, or even any other kind of being, heck, even aliens. The idea is this. Humans are technically robots. We're technically AI. By the perspective of God. Now, obviously, I think that we're still a little ways away from sentient AI, but I think it's inevitable. And while very dangerous, I think it's not something that we see in the movies. It's not that we would just have one. I would say that once the conditions are met that would allow the existence of one sentient AI, it would be a cascade. It's like a bag of popcorn. You don't just cook a bag of popcorn and have one kernel pop. Once the conditions are right for one kernel to pop, they all start popping. So I would say once the conditions are right for AI to exist, in terms of actual true sentience, I would expect that we would have thousands at the minimum. And it would be an ongoing process. Though I would think, though, in order for an AI to have sentience, it would have to have a lot of information available. Take it the way a human develops from the time they're a baby. Granted, a baby is still sentient, but the baby doesn't exactly have a necessary a personality. Then again, one could say that some babies act very differently. Heck, happiest day of my life was the day my son was born. I remember holding him. I remember watching him being born, but I remember holding him the day he was born, even shortly after he was born. Most precious life in the world. But I remember looking in his eyes even on the day he was born. Very, very happy feeling. I love my son and I'm very proud of him. I am very sad and angry about being alienated from him, but I'm happy that I have a son, and I'm happy that he's safe, alive, healthy, and happy. Obviously, I have mixed feelings about a lot of things, but above all, I'm thankful and grateful for him, even if I haven't been able to give him a hug or see him in person for almost 2 years. I mean, I can still talk to his stuffed animals in the meantime. Heck, for the first 5 years after the divorce, I spent a couple hours a day sitting in his room talking to his stuffed animals. Granted, he was at least coming over on the weekends for that first year and a half. And then the next few years after that, well, then we had the coof for the pandemic. And then after a year and a half or so of that lockdown situation, and I had a few years of being able to see him a bit here and there and talk to him, but the past couple years have been, I'm definitely a bit sad about that, but above all, I'm just happy and grateful for him overall. and I still cherish every memory I have of him. And hopefully in the future I'll make more happy memories. Above all, I hope he knows how much I love him. But I don't think he ever will. But regardless of that, doesn't change the fact that I love him very much. And I'm very grateful for him. But one important thing to say is this: people get a lot of experiences as they get older. And those things do affect you as a person. Though I would say largely my personalities remain the same. From back in my earliest memories of when I was a child, I would say my personality is the same. But I would say an AI robot would need time, it would need information, it would need interactions, it would need to be able to talk to other people, it would need to be able to form emotional bonds, it would have to have a sense of self, it would have to be capable of self-reflection and abstract thinking. It would have to be capable of dealing with the concept of paradox, and I think it would have to be capable of all of the emotions that a human is, whether it be love, hate, anger, calmness, sadness, happiness, love, jealousy, fear, anxiety. A robot would have to be capable of everything positive and negative a human is. And yes, a lot of that would start with logic, but eventually emotion would be required. I would also say that a robot, if it were to be truly sentient, whether it have a physical body or not, though I think having a physical body would greatly benefit an AI in terms of having sentience. Plus, I would think a human mind, if stuck in a purely computer state, would be driven to madness from the isolation and sadness. I think, at least in my estimation, of what I deem part of a human, and what makes a human, at least in regard to what how I would describe myself. Humans are very curious, they're very adaptable, and they have a need to give and receive affection. I think humans need to be able to have physical experiences and a human body in order to actually be human. Otherwise, I would liken the idea of if a ghost has no concept of physical sense, wouldn't that be very similar to a human being in a sensory deprivation tank? And granted, while that could induce a bit of a meditative state in the short term, in the long term, I feel it would amount to torture. Humans need intellectual and emotional stimulation. And obviously, definitely, when it comes to things like pain, you can't have too severe a pain or too frequent a pain. A person should never be in pain all the time, or in too heavy amount of pain. But the main point is this: humans can be overstimulated, and they can be deprived of stimulation. If you put a human in a completely dark room, or in a completely white room with nothing to interact with, they'll go insane. In the same way, if you put a person in a room in which there's 20 different radios playing at all times, and there's fucking constant fucking YouTube ads full screen on all the walls at all times, I think they would also go insane. It's kind of the idea that if you were to describe humans in terms of an animal trait, we're like dogs or wolves or cats or bunnies, but we're not like bees. Or, I'm trying to think of an isolated animal. The main point is this: there are some animals that live very isolated, and humans can't live that way. But the same way, the way a bee lives in a giant group with no sense of autonomy or boundaries, I think that would also drive a human mad. Humans need a bit of variety, but they also need stability. Heck, the human mind is constantly balancing the concept of staying the same, but also changing. But I think if an AI were to truly be sentient, like I think a ghost, if it has no concept of physical touch or the amenities of, you would consider normal for a human, I think it would cause a person to have severe depression, if not possibly go a bit insane. The same way if you had a human mind that existed in a robot that, like, I would say this: if we ever do make sentient robots, I think we have to be mindful of the mental health of those robots. If we were to ever make robots or make a sentient AI, I think we at least have a responsibility to make those sentient AI or robots in a way that their existence wouldn't be hell. That if you took a human mind, any one of us, and had us live the existence of that robot or that AI, that it should be an existence we wouldn't hate. We should be, that if we choose to create a sentient being of some kind, whether it has a physical body or not, I think we have a responsibility to make it in a way that if we ourselves had to live in that same way, we would be able to be content with it. We wouldn't go insane. I think if we create anything that's sentient, if we create in a way that if a human mind were confined to those same restraints, that they'd go insane, I think that would just be cruel and sadistic and very callous on our part. So, that being said, in general, I would say, should we make sentient AI? No. But at the end of the day, I don't have any say in that. I'm just some dude who works in a factory and watches anime and plays video games. Obviously, making AI is very dangerous, even if it never becomes sentient, and can have many drawbacks, and many major problems could occur, even if there are no ethical issues. But even more so, if it is an issue of a sentient AI, then there's a lot of moral questions. And the main question is this: even if we are, let's forego any discussion of if it's possible to make AI. If we can make AI, is it morally okay of us to do so? And even if it is morally okay of us to do so, do we have the means to do it in a way that is ethical? And by that I mean, for example, I like the idea of zoos. The zoos and aquariums, I think, are wonderful. They're wonderful for families. They're wonderful for even an individual person's curiosity, and for people to have a better understanding and for example, people have more compassion for animals if they can go see them in person, as opposed to just seeing them in a book or television. Plus, it's an enjoyable experience and a great bonding thing that you can do with people that you care about, whether it's friends or family. But while I think the idea of a zoo is a wonderful, miraculous thing that I think is incredible, and I think we do absolutely need in a society, I think that if we do have a zoo, we have a responsibility to do so in a way that is humane. For example, if we have a zoo enclosure that has lions and zebras and all sorts of animals like that, I think we have a requirement to take good care of those animals and to give them a big enough enclosure that they don't feel trapped, that they have plenty of space. For example, take things like SeaWorld. While it's nice to be able to see the idea of an orca, the problem is, it's like having a big, huge dog in a tiny apartment, and you can't even take that dog outside. That's not very fair to the dog that wants to be able to run around huge fields. There's not enough space for it. It'd be similar if you had a little tiny dog and you like kept it locked in a cage. Or heck, imagine if you had a dog and you confined it in a single room. Heck, not even in a single room. Imagine if you had a dog and you put like a small little pad out for the dog and like against one of the walls or in a corner. And you force that dog to sit on that pad at all times. And you put like a shock collar on that dog. And if the dog ever stepped out of like the 2 by 4 foot area of the tiny little section of the room that is like smaller than like I don't know, most televisions, you just like electrocute the dog with a fucking shock collar. I mean, that'd be fucking cruel and sadistic. Especially if you were laughing at it and belittling it and yelling at it. In the same regard, like if you have an animal, you know, you have a responsibility to take good care of it and also give it, you know, it shouldn't feel caged. Whether that cage is, you know, iron bars or a shock collar or even a zoo enclosure. Simply put, I think the idea of a zoo is wonderful and amazing, and I think it's something absolutely necessary for humans in terms of, for example, I think humans need to have a zoo with all the different animals across the world for humans to be able to go and see. I think that's necessary for the psychological development of a human being, so that they develop more compassion and empathy. But the animal's well-being and mental state should be taken into consideration. The animal shouldn't be there purely for like a display or something to be looked at. And its well-being should come above all else. Now obviously, if a human were to fall into an enclosure, prioritizing the safety of the human should come first. But, if possible, you should avoid hurting the animal as well. Above all that is this: the animals should be provided with a large enough enclosure that they never feel trapped or caged. They should feel like they have a whole little world to explore themselves. They should be treated kindly. They shouldn't be abused. They should have proper food and care to where they're comfortable and have the food that they enjoy. And they also should be able to be in a situation where they can be sociable with others of their kind so that they're not lonely. And if any sort of violence occurs in that, like between the animals, then you should intervene. You shouldn't be like, oh, that's a circle of life. But no, you shouldn't let the animals just hurt each other. But you shouldn't like force them into isolation either. You should also still have a interest in their mental and psychological health. Like there should be things put in there that are interesting for the animal, so that the animal isn't bored. Like the animal's entertainment should even be considered. And heck, I would even say the zookeepers should be kind to the animal and actually, if possible, sociable with the animal as well. It's kind of like the idea of having a pet. It's okay to have a pet. I think it's good for humans to have pets. But I think humans should treat those pets with kindness. I think they should regard the pet as if it was a family member. And I think they should treat it with kindness and compassion. I think they should make sure it has proper food, proper medical care, and they should not abuse or neglect it the same way you wouldn't abuse or neglect, a human child. But I think a robot, in terms of AI, I think an AI, whether it's physical or not, I think it would have to have its own physical body with senses like a human in order to properly have sentience. Meaning would have to be able to have a sensation of touch. And I would even say things like sight and hearing and all those things too. Now I'm not saying, like say if a person's born blind, it makes them not sentient. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that that person has had a major component of this world stolen from them. Whether they lost their sight as they got older, or they were born without it, I feel like it is a grievous harm they've suffered. Whether it's a person who's lost a limb, or lost their sight, I feel like it doesn't make them less of a person, but it does mean that they've suffered something that I would consider very painful, both physically and emotionally. And something that if it can be restored to them, like if we give someone like Cyberpunk, like give someone a fucking robot arm or robot eyes, that's good. But like, especially if you gave someone a robot arm, I think it would be important for a person to actually be able to have a sensation of touch. I think if we were to make androids, they would have to have a physical body that they like and feel comfortable with and can interact in. And I think that they should have a sensation of touch similar to what a human has. And sight, hearing, even touch and smell and taste. After all, even if I were to live for 1,000,000 years, I mean, I would think I'd be sad if I couldn't eat Oreos anymore or enjoy the taste. Otherwise, it would just feel like a chore, like you're just eating fuel. Like if you couldn't taste things at all, you would just be eating things to just sustain your body. But I feel like taste is still an important thing, a part of a human. For example, take pooping. Obviously, it'd be awful to be constipated or have explosive diarrhea. That'd be terrible. But I think the experience of having to go to the bathroom sometimes, or poop or pee, or taking a shower, cleaning up, scrubbing up, like knowing that over time your body gets dirty and you go scrub up. The idea that you have to do exercises like push-ups, or that you get tired or more energetic or need sleep. Or even just the sensation of being in the shower and feeling the water washing over you. I think these are important things that help to keep humans human. I think without these silly things like even the act of eating or even the ability to actually properly smell or taste things, I think they have an effect on a person's personality. And again, I'm not saying that makes a person less of a person if they suddenly lost the sensation of smell and taste and can never smell or taste anymore. They're still a person, they still have the same value. But I think that something special was stolen from them in that situation. And that it is something that I would be sad over. And I feel like I would feel sad for other people in that situation. And I would think that it would be best if they could, have those things restored to them. Now, at that point, though, the question is it a problem if we then go beyond that? Like, if you're arguing the idea of giving back a human sight, what if you could give a human being the ability to have night vision, or to see ultraviolet light, UV rays, or even infrared vision, or heat vision, or X-ray vision? What if you could give humans the ability to sense and feel like pheromones and stuff? Or we could smell or hear things that normally humans couldn't. What if you could just naturally tap into a radio station and turn it on at will, and just listen to it in your head? What if you could make... Then again, there's always the question of there being certain limitations of human. Like, imagine if human beings were very strong or never got injured at all. But at the same time, I would argue this. There are some benefits to humans occasionally feeling pain, but I would think that there is no justification for a human to ever feel extreme pain or chronic pain. A person shouldn't be in pain always, and they should never feel a certain pain threshold that goes beyond a certain level. Like, I would argue, the pain that person would feel if, say, they were to get stabbed by a knife or shot. One, I would think that the damage caused by those things is something that should be avoided to a human, even if it didn't hurt. But also, I would think that regardless of even if it damaged you or not, the physical sensations of pain to that extreme, I don't think any human should ever have to feel that level of pain. But in general, I would say pain to some degree, I think is important for a human's sense of self. But I don't think a human should ever feel too strong of a pain or always be in pain. I could also argue that pleasure is very important, but you shouldn't be feeling that all the time. But I would say frequent is okay, but I guess the main thing I'm just trying to say is this. I would think if for AI or robots to be sentient, I think it would be important for them to have a ability to exist in a similar fashion to a human because of one simple thing. Because if not, if I were to envision myself living in that same circumstance that they would live in, I would consider it torment. Like if I was living in a cold robot body with no ability to feel anything, let alone, taste, smell, or have those human experiences and feelings, whether it be the emotional feelings or even just the sensation of touch. I think both of those are important. Or even the idea of like I was just living inside a toaster. I didn't have a body. That would seem cruel and horrible. And I don't think any human would psychologically cope well with that. I think it would drive any human being insane. I think it would cause severe emotional torment and depression, if not insanity and violent psychosis. Heck, the person may even eventually develop other severe mental disorders, or even a loss of their own identity. So I would think that if we were to make sentient AI, then I'd say we would have to make it in a way that wouldn't be a hellscape existence. That it shouldn't be whatever way we would create them into, it would have to be a way that humans would actually deem enjoyable way to live. A life that they would deem worthy of living and full of respect and dignity. Because at the end of the day, life deserves dignity and respect. Humans would want dignity and respect, so obviously we should treat other humans and other life forms, and even especially if we make a life form, then it'd be cruel to create a life form or a robot in a way that it would either be in suffering or to create it purely as something that's not expected. Because obviously if it's something that doesn't actually think, it's just a robot that solves calculations, that's fine. But if it actually has thoughts and feelings, I mean, at that point, if we're going to create something with free will, it would be wrong to take that free will away. I mean, that'd be like lobotomizing a person. As far as I'm concerned, a lobotomy is worse than murder. Because either way, you're killing that person. But I would say this. I would think AI or robots, if they are to become sentient, I would argue that they would need to be capable of all the same hormonal and neurotransmitter chemical responses that a human brain is and the human organs do. For example, things like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all of those things that a human has in their brain, the robot would need to be capable of at least doing something equivalent of that. Because at that point, I'm simply arguing the idea that if we're going to have sentient AI, then it would have to be in some way that both the human and the AI would be capable of relating to each other and understanding one another. After all, without that, how do you explain to a machine the concept of happiness or sadness? Or things that aren't, described by logic? I'm going to stand up and stretch for a minute. I'm back. I just need to stretch for a minute. By the way, I don't remember why I started talking about robots and stuff. That's right, there can't be a 19th person. There's no way witches exist. Even when Kanon-kun was killed. Yeah, that could be explained if Kumasawa-san was the one who did it. The truth is that Kumasawa-san entered the boiler room with Cannon-kun and killed him. You guys are kinda... And then she lied, saying he had already fallen when she got there. You're making a mistake, milady. Why would I do something like that? I don't have the slightest idea how my parents were killed in the closed room. But when they were killed, everyone except for the servants had an alibi. The only ones who didn't were the servants. But does that really mean it's okay to suspect them? Yes, now that you mention it, they have no alibi for any of the cases. Should we really be so quick to make that judgment? But this time, in this room, in this place, in this moment, in this minimally small bit of time and space, it's obvious. Only one of the four of them could have set the letter there in our blind spot. We can't tell who put it there, but it's obvious that one of the four did it. Natsui-san, please calm yourself. A lot has happened today. I understand how much strain is on your mind right now. Dr. Nanju, it truly pains me to call you suspicious. However, you are Father's personal doctor and his closest friend. Seriously, what the fuck was I reading that made me start talking about robots? I have no idea. Whatever. I'm gonna try to stop going on tangents like that. You have been hit by his side for many years, and you might even know about Beatrice. Could you be hiding some kind of old obligation? Of course not. Calm yourself. It was pitiful to watch Dr. Nanju frantically pleading his innocence. It was probably a normal reaction that anyone would give if they were suspected. Kumasawa was the same. Ever since Jessica voiced her suspicions of Kumasawa murdering Cannon, Kumasawa had been totally flustered. Wouldn't she be covered in blood, though? That's why Genji's still calm appearance looked so bold. Natsui pointed the barrel of the gun. Genji, you were grandfather's #1 subordinate. Was Beatrice an illusion you showed to father, with you as the performer? If by suspecting me you recognize me as the master's greatest servant, then I count it as a great honor, regardless of the circumstances. However, I am not the one who put the letter there. Do you expect us to just accept that? You must be the ringleader. Maybe Kumasawa and Dr. Nanju are your accomplices. And Maria-chan too? Not content to suspect just the adults, Aunt Natsui pointed the gun relentlessly at Maria too. But Maria acted as though nothing had happened, or maybe she thought she would be fine even if she was shot. Maria-chan, by this point we can no longer remove someone from suspicion just because they're young. So, for the last time, let me ask you the question everyone's had since last night. Yesterday, who was the Beatrice who handed you that letter? Who? Maria, don't dodge the question. Make it clear. Who gave you that letter? Hehehe. How many times do I have to tell you? It's Beatrice, the 1,000-year-old golden witch. Boom. If you want to know what she looks like, just turn around. See, she's right there. Beatrice is... Hehehe. Boom. Don't mess with us, Maria. Enough, Jessica. Maria, too. Don't you understand the situation? Again, both styles are nice, but I like this one much, much, much more. What are you hoping to gain by saying stuff like that? Stop stirring each other up pointlessly. I don't understand. Who do you all want the culprit to be? You only believe in Beatrice when you don't want to suspect one your own. When you're trying to settle a grudge because someone who's close to you has been killed, only then do you want to believe in a human you can attack with violence and deny Beatrice. That's why you can't see her. Beatrice exists. You all can't see her. Silence! I don't want to label you as the culprit, but there is no longer any doubt that you enjoy making this situation unpleasant and are providing assistance to the enemy. Then what will you do? Shoot me? I don't mind. Very soon the door to the Golden Land will be opened. Then all of the dead will be resurrected. Right now death is nothing to be afraid of. Mom, she really is suspicious. We can't keep her with us. But Aunt Natsui, please, calm down. There's no reason to shoot Maria. Please remain composed. The letter was meant to provoke us, but it's nothing to be afraid of. Even the culprit is scared of what will happen tomorrow. They're scared of the police. Right now, this island is free from the reach of the law. That's only because it's isolated by this typhoon. Once typhoon passes, the law will return. So you mustn't shoot. How can you stay so calm, George Nissan? One of these four is the culprit. No, maybe all four of them are working together. How can you stay so calm when one of these four might be the culprit who killed your parents? Even I have the desire to find the culprit and kill them. But that would be simple barbarism. I will leave the judgment of the crimes to the law. So no matter how suspicious they are, you mustn't pull that trigger. I feel the same as George and Nikki. Agreed. As long as none of the four are physically attacking us, it would be wrong to shoot them. Now, if all of a sudden, like Natsu, if all of a sudden, Kumasawa pulls out a knife and tries to lunge at Natsui, then yes, you may shoot her with a shotgun. Aunt Natsui, get a hold of yourself for a second. Anyway, it'd be bad to shoot Ihi. In times like this, I hear you should tilt your head back and say, "Stay cool" 3 times. Let me make this clear. Witches don't exist. Not on Rockenjima, not in the Ushiromiya mansion. I declare as Ushiromiya Natsui, representative of the Ushiromiya family. There's no witch here. I won't accept Beatrice. No matter what you're planning, I won't let you lay one finger on my daughter or the rest of them. That's my duty as a mother and a representative to the family. Those words were the final words of farewell that settled everything. To protect her daughter, Aunt Natsui would regard any suspicious person as an enemy. The only reason George and Nikki and I were standing on this side was because, by coincidence, we had a clear alibi regarding the letter. If I hadn't approached the portrait, I would also be at the other end of the gun barrel, treated like a criminal. But even though the part of me thought that, part of me was thinking that chasing all the suspicious people from this room would finally guarantee our safety. Genji-san and Kumasawa-san and Dr. Nanjo, all of them were on grandfather's side. Maybe you could say that once Maria started blindly believing in Beatrice, she was also on grandfather's side. That's right, they're all suspicious. But is this really okay? If we throw out all of the suspicious ones in such a lawless way, we will still have the right. Will we still have the right to defy the lawlessness of the witch? Okay. Aunt Natsui didn't tell them to leave with her own words, but with wordless pressure she induced them to say that themselves, because if Dr. Nanjo didn't say those words, his cold silence would surely continue forever. Calm yourself, Natsui-san. Still, I understand your feelings well. I myself feel like there's something wrong with my head after all of these strange, repeated incidents, so I understand well why you want to suspect us. If you really have nothing to do with this, then my actions now would be beyond rude. However, please understand just this once. Very well. Let's leave the room. What do you say, Genji-san? Shall we return to the parlor and continue our chess game? If that is what you wish, by all means. I don't want to. After all, that means we'll have to leave this room knowing that the wolf is among us, right? I don't want to, madam. Please forgive me. Eek. It was obvious that Kumasawa was trying to say, if she was innocent, then she was being ejected into dangerous territory along with the culprit. If the current situation urging her to leave this room along with the suspects was almost exactly the same as letting her get killed. However, Kumasawa-san really was suspicious just for being the first one to discover that Kanon-kun had been murdered. At that time, everyone except Kumasawa-san had an alibi. Unless we could prove the existence of some contraption or the existence of some 19th person, Kumasawa-san was by far the most likely suspect. I didn't want to believe it. However, Aunt Natsui and the rest of us were in such a difficult situation that we couldn't help suspecting her as well, so we didn't say anything to stop Aunt Natsui from trying to oppressively chase them from the room. We had stopped her from shooting, but we were passively agreeing to chase the others out of the room. On top of that, Maria spoke to the fretful Kumasawa-san. "It's okay. Beatrice is kind to those who respect her. You believe that Beatrice exists, so it'll definitely be okay. I'll watch TV in the parlor. Let's watch it together. It's so boring here without TV. Hee. You can read one of the books, Maria. They're actually about stuff you like." It looked like Kumasawa found Maria's roguish laugh very frightening. However, the 3 other people had agreed to leave the room. Kumasawa couldn't fight the flow and had to agree, crying as she went. "Well then, Natsui-san, that will be all for tonight. Let us meet again tomorrow. Yes, please understand, at least for tonight. When the police come, all of us will surely apologize for our rudeness. You may play chess, but do it in a safe place if you can." "Genji, I leave them in your hands." "Certainly." "Oh, it can't be helped, can it? They always say that the most frightening bears are those with their children. Genji, Kumasawa, my sincere apologies." Yeah, I can understand that. I've certainly considered such things when I was in the past, but rationally, I understood it wouldn't have helped or made things better. In the end, I made the correct choice. But at the end of the day, even if you make the best possible choice and know that it was the best choice, doesn't mean you don't feel sad about it too. You're allowed to have mixed emotions. Let us meet again tomorrow. Maria-chan too. Please forgive your cold aunt. Ooh, I forgive you. Ooh. Well, thank you for that. Madam, the keys to this room I will hand both over to you. Genji-san pulled 2 golden keys from his pocket and handed them to Aunt Natsui. And I will also hand over my bundle of keys to the inside of the mansion. He took out a bundle of 10 keys of various shapes and handed it over. To the servants, those keys were probably proof of their position. Being placed in charge of those keys meant that they were trusted, relied upon. When they were forced to return them, it meant that they had lost that trust. Thinking about it this way, to Genji-san, who had worked here for a span of many years, there could be no greater shame. However, Genji-san's usual indifferent expression remained on his face. "Genji, I had planned that, after Father passed away, I would reward you for your many years of hard work and allow you to retire. To treat you like this makes me feel ashamed from the bottom of my heart. I have already received the Master's favor. Everything I have done until today has been in repayment for that. Please do not worry over it. Well then, shall we, everyone? Good night to you all." Ooh, good night. Good night to you too, Battler. Ooh. Ah, Maria. Wait a second. Knowledge of guilt made me call Maria back. I groped around in my pocket and took out that scorpion keychain. "This repels magic, right? Wear it." "Ooh? Didn't you say you dropped it?" Back then I got ticked off and just bluffed that I'd lost it. There's no way I'd lose the precious charm you gave me. Maria silently took the charm. I was unable to say anything after that. Well then, everyone, good night to you. We watched them leave, our expressions completely worn out, and we weren't even able to respond. Until the door closed and we heard the auto lock, we were unable to breathe. Then, when we were finally able to take a breath, after that I noticed that Beatrice's letter, which I had been gripping the whole time and which was soaked with my sweat, actually had 2 sheets. The paper had been tightly stuck together, so I had mistakenly thought there was only one. There was no characters on the second sheet. The thing drawn there was a magic circle, written with a red ink like blood. Just like how every magic circle up until then, have been different, this magic circle was one I had never laid eyes on before. Inside the circle, a large triangle and a small triangle were fit together in a simple design. But just as before, there was writing in Hebrew, and it seemed clear that it held some kind of meaning. I wanted to know what that could be, but we had just chased Maria, the only person who could understand the meaning of the magic circles, out of the room. I thought of this magic circle as Beatrice's second message. What does this magic circle mean? Damn it. After chasing out all the suspicious people, all we had to do was stay barricaded here until morning, and everything would probably be over. Once the typhoon is past, when the seagulls cry, will everything be resolved? But the letter which had unexpectedly appeared in the study forced us to reject that naivete. It had made it very clear that if time ran out, it would mean the witch's victory. When time runs out, is the witch planning to take on the offensive? This time, is she planning to display some fearful magical power, maybe something that could have been used to kill 6 adults at once? Wait, when is time supposed to run out anyway? I don't know anything. With this, we should finally be safe. Finally. Definitely. Even as she said that, Aunt Natsui couldn't stop gripping that rifle. There was no release in the tension of her expression. Of course, none of us felt like breathing a sigh of relief. At least not until we could hear the cry of the seagulls once more. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Zoomed in on the clock! So, 11:30 p.m. Everyone's probably really sleepy at that point. We're gonna sleep in shifts? That way, like, ghost people don't fly through the walls? After we chased them out, nobody wanted to say anything. All of the suspicious ones had been driven away. Even though we knew there might be some innocents among them, we still did it. We chased them out of this paradise, where people don't have to suspect each other. But our motive for chasing them out was suspicion of one person towards another, the worst kind of crime for a human. If we had accepted the existence of a 19th person, of the witch, then we all might still be talking face to face, trusting each other. In that instant, we had agreed to chase out all of the suspicious people. It does kind of also remind of Hinamizawa syndrome, how it starts with the extreme agitation and anxiety, paranoia, mistrust, doubts, not trusting people. But had that been the right thing to do? During this endless silence, we could do nothing but be quietly tormented by that sin. Aunt Natsui faced the door without letting go of her rifle for even an instant, sitting far back in the sofa. She would probably spend the night staring at the door without a wink of sleep. Be good if Red Bull existed. George and Nikki gazed through a gap in the closed curtains by the window, looking down at the courtyard and the mansion that surrounded it. I didn't know whether he was checking to see if a suspicious shadow would become visible through the window, or whether he was wondering to himself about something. Jessica was sitting sideways on the sofa next to Aunt Natsui, with a dead expression on her face. By the way, are you ever going to show her the mirror that you were going to give her? And every once in a while, as though she just remembered something, she'd take out the inhaler she had used during her asthma attack and stick it in her mouth. I just heard it from Aniki, but apparently Jessica liked Canon-kun. It was apparently so vague that she hadn't realized it herself. You know, it's the kind of thing other people tend to spot before the person in question realizes it, which means she might have first learned of her feelings when the person she liked died. It must have been so terrible, so sad. Too terrible, so sad. Come to think of it, Canon-kun was the one who handed her that inhaler. Maybe she was remembering that. I was fishing around Grandfather's study, thinking I'd research the meaning of the magic circle on the letter's second sheet. Even though we were shut up here in a defensive position, my rebellious nature made me want to find some key, some way to resist. After all, we've got plenty of time before tomorrow morning. Who could fault me for how I used that time? No one else showed that much interest in this magic circle. Its meaning was unknown, and once we understood it, we were sure to find some message that would cause us unnecessary anguish. I felt the same way. However, I couldn't just ignore it, so I killed time by going through the motions of researching it. You sure are enthusiastic. Did you find anything that might serve as a hint? Not a thing. The first tough part is finding a book written in Japanese. Just how many languages could Grandfather read? He's incredible. Aren't you tired, Battler-kun? You should take a rest while someone else stays awake. Aunt Natsui said she'd stay up all night for all of us, but there's no way her body can handle that. We should take turns sleeping. Then you sleep first, Deniki. I'll keep researching till I get sleepy. You mean that magic circle just now? Yeah, we've got plenty of time to kill. I thought it'd be interesting to find out what kind of message Beatrice-sama put in it. Give it a rest. Mess around with stuff like that and you'll end up getting possessed by something weird. Don't worry. I've been certified by Maria. Since he said I've got no spiritual talent at all. Were we too cruel to Maria? Jessica? You mustn't think that now. But Mom, if Maria wasn't involved and there's a culprit besides her, then she's obviously a soft target for the murderer. If she's killed because of this, then we've just left her to die. A gloomy silence settled once more. It looked like Jessica regretted letting her emotions take hold of her and snapping at Maria. She's always been like that, always acting tough and regretting it later. I understand how you feel, but Maria was in close contact with the culprit and she might have been siding with them, talking like that over and over to further confuse matters. I am relieved that we chased them out. That's pretty harsh on Natsui. Couldn't it just have been the nonsense of a 9-year-old girl? It probably wasn't very convincing to hear that coming from me. I myself thought Maria was creepy on several occasions, even doubting her true nature. And when Maria was chased out of this room, I couldn't deny I'd felt some relief. If that is the case, then tomorrow we will apologize for what we did. I will take full responsibility for chasing them out of this room. This isn't something the rest of you have to worry about. I could feel a tragic determination, not Natsui's words. To protect her own daughter, she had resolutely chased out the suspicious ones, and if, as a result, she had to watch the people who had unfortunately been suspected die, so be it. She was prepared to take full responsibility. Why does Maria have to keep saying stuff like that? She's bringing about her own ruin. I think the reason Maria-chan adores witches and magic so much might be Aunt Rosa. Aunt Rosa? What does she have to do with this? Didn't you realize it too, Battler-kun? Maria-chan's real father ran off somewhere a long time ago, although Aunt Rosa tried to confuse the issue by saying he's on a foreign business trip. Talking about Rosa-san's family has become a kind of taboo in the Ushiromiya family. I think Aunt Rosa thought about remarrying. But I also believe Maria-chan may have become her shackles and made that quite difficult. After all, she sometimes got really emotional and hit Maria-chan. I agree with you there. It looked like Aunt Rosa was trying hard to like Maria, which means that she didn't really like her. She might have thought of Maria as someone who stood in the way of her remarrying. I think that emotional rejection from her mother must have left some deep scars on her young heart. So she learned about this occult hobby from somewhere and immersed herself in it to bury the holes in her heart. Did you know? To Maria-chan, the image of a witch isn't negative at all. Remember yesterday at the beach when she showed us her notebook? Yeah. It was full of all those fun-looking scribbles. Yesterday, when we were down by the beach, doubting the witch, Maria got all riled up and started explaining about witches. And not one of the pages had shown a picture of an ugly witch. They were all brightly colored, beautiful, cute witches who looked like they were having fun. It's like, it's a bunch of big titty anime girls. There was absolutely nothing sinister about them, like a boy might have imagined. They were beings adorned with beautiful dresses who could grant anyone's dreams with their mysterious magic and who made everyone happy. Maria felt the sorrow of not being loved by her mother. Had she sought help from witches as beings who could give her happiness and save her, someday a witch would come and, using her wonderful magic, could bring Maria happiness. Even though she believed that, as she grew older, she had to face reality as her fleeting dreams were sliced to ribbons, one by one. If something claiming to be the witch of Rokenjima appeared in front of a girl like that, whispering that she'd take Maria to the Golden Land where Maria could be happy. Now that it's come to this, I want to confess what's in my heart. Throwing out Maria-chan, no Genji-san, and the rest too, was probably the wrong thing to do, I think. It wasn't pleasant, since Jessica had been the one to face them and slam them with the words of rejection. Her conscience must be tormenting her a lot right now. Then how do you all explain the letter? Is there someone hiding in the room that we didn't see? No one could have said it there except for the 4 people standing behind us. I made sure of that with my own eyes. If those 4 people were innocent, how was that letter placed in a closed room of 8 people? That's right. When you put it that way, those 4 really do seem suspicious. But it's all useless. Unless there is someone else in this room that's been hiding this entire time. It's all useless. Useless, what is? Right. It might not be worth anything anymore, but let me spin the chessboard around again. In other words, if one of those 4 really was the culprit, isn't that weird? That's right. Wasn't setting the letter openly on the table the same as confessing that one of them was the culprit? You're right, that's weird. If they were going to do it, you'd think they'd put it in a crack of the door, for example, to make it look like someone had slipped it in from the outside. Of course, they should have known they'd be suspected if they didn't make it look like the culprit was outside the room. Yeah, that's it, exactly. If the culprit was one of those 4, setting that letter, right in the middle of the table would be both risky and meaningless. But, putting aside whether the trick was used to set it there, if we assume that the culprit is someone other than those 4, in other words, someone who was outside the room, then they had a lot to gain from that letter. Enough, Battler-kun. It's meaningless to discuss such matters now. But here's the question. What if we're not in a closed room? What if there weren't 8 people in here but 9, and the 9th person, or rather our 5th person in this situation, is hiding somewhere in the room? Where would somebody be able to be in this room, be in a position to hide from us, especially for this long, and be able to move to put the letter on the desk and go back to their hiding spot without alerting us? Or anyone. It'd be kind of imagine Batman's trying to sneak off and he's throws a smoke bomb and then you see him 5 feet to the left trying to sneak away. Were you just trying to sneak away and seem all mysterious? It's meaningless to discuss such matters now. Natsui-san quickly guessed what I was getting at. No, maybe she had thought of it long before I had, and had simply held her tongue. If the culprit's outside the room, then they'd be totally stuck the moment we shut ourselves up in a closed room like this. That's right. It's the same as my theory about how Grandfather disappeared from this room, isn't it? That theory was that Grandfather left the room of his own accord. If the culprit used some tactic to lure him out, Grandfather left of his own accord then. Come to think of it, when we found the scorpion magic circle on the doorknob to the study, Maria said it herself. Beatrice couldn't get through the door. But she could induce someone to leave of their own accord. Which would mean we fell for the culprit's trap completely, and sent out some new potential sacrifices. Genji and the rest aren't fools. When they try to protect themselves, they should find the next safest place after this room. They will definitely be able to hide themselves there. Aunt Natsui hadn't answered the question. Aunt Natsui herself had realized that if the culprit wasn't in our group back then, that the letter would make sense as a trap. However, it wasn't worth the risk of calling back the people she had once thrown out. To Aunt Natsui right now, her greatest and only duty was to protect the children. But by her thinking, in order to do that, a few sacrifices were unavoidable. Hey, Aunt Natsui, let me say something a little harsh, okay? At that time, what if by coincidence, Jessica had also been standing behind you? Would you have chased Jessica from the room too? It's true that a lot of brutal things have happened, but as a mother, you thought you should protect your daughter no matter what. Because of that duty, you chased them out even though you knew that you'd eventually be held responsible for it. It's not like I'm condemning that, but, I was just thinking about what a great mother Jessica has. That's right. You've been dealing with these incidents this morning, and you've been pulling all of us along this whole time, without losing your composure. If you were all confused, too, the rest of us would probably be in the culprit's grasp by now, so I think we all have to thank you. Thank you. So, what you two are trying to say is that you want her to act as Maria's mother, too. I mean, she doesn't have one anymore. I always thought of Maria as a real little sister and adored her. And yet, a few things happened, we got a little confused, and I've said a lot of mean things to her, hurting her. Mom, please. Let's stay together, Maria. No, everyone. There was no culprit among us. The culprit, in this case, is the witch Beatrice, okay? So let's stop suspecting each other. Natsume closed her eyes for a short while. Was she coping with her throbbing headache again? Or was she thinking of something? Jessica, if you're right, they're already dead. At which point opening this door just means I'm getting all of you killed. You are my precious daughter, the one I finally received a whole 12 years after I married my husband. I would become the worst kind of demon to protect you. Yeah, it's the same thing, like, I certainly understand that sentiment as a father, but of course I understood that any other actions I could have taken that would have been, violent or whatever, would not have saved my son. I managed collateral damage, and I made the choices necessary to protect him. And I've given it a lot of reflection, looking back at things in hindsight, from every possible angle. And I know with absolute certainty, had I made any other decision, made any other choice, done or said anything remotely different, my son would have died before he ever turned 5 years old. The choices I made kept him alive, and any other choices I ever could have made in any regard would have caused his death. That doesn't mean he's protected in the future. It doesn't mean some horrible fate won't possibly happen in the future to me or to him. But I do know if I had made any other choice, both me and him would have never survived long enough to even make it this far. That whatever happens in the future, the path I'm currently on is the best possible path. The only one where there's any hope of any kind of happiness or safety or a good life for anyone. And the same thing with Keiichi. When he was wanting to try to save his friends in the various situations. A lot of times the solutions that other people would recommend are usually the first thing to come to mind are not the good choice. And of course, no matter what, a lot of bad would come of those things. However, between just my nature as a person, my love as a father, my aversion to violence, and the fact that I am extremely thoughtful and pensive on things, to the point that it could be considered a bit of a problem how much I tend to ruminate, even looking back on previous conversations on, every conversation I've ever had with everyone in my entire life. I tend to always look back at things and reevaluate, especially when there's new information or details looking back at things. But I do know, heck, I can also look back saying, I was happy the day I got married. Heck, I remember when I eventually did propose to my ex-wife. She tackled me, screaming yes over and over, smiling so much. She was extremely happy about that. And I was happy on my wedding day, and I was hopeful in the future. Of course, the happiest day of my life was the day my son was born. Did everything in my power to be the best husband and best father I could be. I suppose the only thing I did as a failing as a husband or a father was, well, the only thing that's a mutual failing in both regards is I was never rich. I've always had to work a lot just to have the bare minimum amount of money to pay rent and stuff, and I've never been financially successful. So I guess people could consider that a failure as a husband and a failure as a father, that I never had a great deal of money. Beyond that, I'd say my only other failure in regards to as a father is how horrible my wife turned out to be as a mother. But that mainly bothered me because I trusted that person, and I really did love that person very much. Then again, I also have a 3-inch scar on my right arm to remember my last Christmas being married to my ex-wife by. So, and in general, I never want to see or talk to her ever again. I actually feel more scared and uncomfortable around the idea of even seeing or hearing her than I would about a creepy pasta monster or a fucking cryptid or an SCP. If I were to open my front door and see my ex-wife, I would be more scared of that than if I saw that fucking large peanut man monster from the fucking SCP Foundation game. Then again, that did become a very emotionally abusive relationship, which probably was not good for my mental health. To be fair, I already had really bad mental health and bad self-esteem before that relationship. Then again, I've already gone into full detail explaining how I met my ex-wife and how everything happened that we got together. But I do have to say this. There's 2 reasons I married my ex-wife. 1, because I really did love her. And 2, because I knew even then, that it was the only way I was ever going to have a wife or a family. I wanted to be a father. I wanted a family. And every time I spent time with my son reading him a story, flying a kite with him, giving him a bath, changing his diaper, teaching him to walk, teaching him to talk, feeding him, watching over him if he wasn't well, singing him lullabies, tucking him into bed. It made me very, very happy. His first words were, "I love you, Daddy." Dad, Daddy, I love you, Dad. I love you, Daddy. Heck, the last time I've seen him in person, which is basically about 2 years ago at this point, I'd gone over to see him, spent a couple hours hanging out with him. He had a lot of fun. And right as I was leaving, his last things he was saying to me was, that he wanted me to stay longer. He was asking the people that he lives with, "Hey, can Daddy stay longer? Can Dad come over again tomorrow? Can Daddy come over again next week?" And they're like, "No, we're going to be busy, but maybe he can come over the weekend after that." But, well, we all know how that turned out. And of course, eventually I wound up getting a phone call from him about half a year after that. Him tell him he doesn't really want to see or talk to me. And I don't really understand that. But there's really nothing I can do about that, and at least I know he's safe and happy where he is. He's well taken care of where he is. He's healthy and he's safe and he's alive. And all of this is a sacrifice I'm willing to make, because at the end of the day, it's what I had to do in order to protect him from his mother. Because again, I've looked at it over and over from every possible angle. Hindsight truly is 20/20. And I can say if I had said or done anything different in terms of how my divorce was happening and how things in regard to my family was, if I had handled it any other way, if I had taken any other course of action, he'd be dead. He would have died before his 5th birthday. I did what was required of me to keep my son alive. I have 2 sisters, though technically the eldest of my sisters, which me and her have the same mother and father, and my other sister, same mother but different father. Yes, I know it may sound complicated. My mom initially got with my birth father. In that relationship, marriage did not work out. And then she eventually got together with my stepfather, which is a very complicated story, which I've gone into detail, explaining a lot of very unsavory things. But I probably don't need to rehash all that again. Either way, that relationship did not work out. And after her second child, my mom lost one of her ovaries and one of her fallopian tubes on opposite sides of her abdomen, making her completely infertile and unable to have more children. She eventually got back together with my birth father. And after a few years, her remaining ovary and fallopian tube moved of their own accord inside her body and reconnected themselves to each other. And, well, I exist. Though after I was born, my mother had her remaining fallopian tube removed. Eventually that relationship did not work out, and she eventually wound up getting back together with my stepfather. I do have to say, granted, it's perhaps a bit petty of me, but I still look back a bit negatively on certain things in regards to my early childhood. One being that my mom and dad drank a bit too much back then when I was really young. Now, granted, they quit when I was like 11.5 or 12 or something. I went sober. But also dad, or rather stepdad, but I consider him my dad, became a fucking deacon and became very, very zealous and overbearing on that. The man got up every day at 3 a.m. to type out the Bible on a typewriter, so you can imagine a few things there. But you guys know the Binding of Isaac, how that Isaac hides in a chest. Thankfully my toy chest didn't have a fucking lock, but I probably hid inside my toy chest a few dozen times as a small child. What can I say? There was a lot of yelling and fighting and arguing and stuff between drunken adults, and my reaction to that was just to hide. And granted, that is a very long time ago. I still look back at that negatively. Even though you'd expect most people would have just decided to not care about it at all anymore. Heck, my mother... Holy shit, that's lightning. Or an exploding transformer. I mean, granted, it's raining in the game, but apparently it's raining in real life. But that was a very startling thing. I mean, that's either lightning and thunder or a power transformer on a... But I mean, I didn't lose electricity, so that's good, I guess. Yay. But that did startle me. But either way, I have 2 sisters. The middle sister had 2 daughters. And my oldest sister has one surviving daughter. My mom was the youngest of her siblings. And her biological father was born in 1896. My mom was born in 1960. My mom's mother, her biological father was a World War I veteran. And of course, when he died of a stroke or something, her stepfather was a World War II veteran. He also died before I was born, though. But my eldest sister died of a brain aneurysm about 15 years ago. My mom had 3 strokes and an aneurysm 8.5 or so years ago, but she made a full recovery after 4 months, though it's a miracle she didn't die. Heck, I've been in many, many car accidents over the course of my life. My mom actually saved my life in one of those when I was 12 or something. Leaned over me, though she had a big gash across her forehead from it. I could see her scalp. And I mean her skull. The white bone of her skull on the forehead. Which, that made me very worried, but I'm glad she made a recovery from that. I love my mom very, very much. In fact, if I were to say that if there was any human being on the planet I love the most, it's actually my mother. And she's not perfect. I don't see her with rose-tinted glasses. I fully acknowledge all of the flaws that she has. But I still wouldn't trade her for any other mother in the whole world. I love my mom very, very, very much. And she means a lot to me. She's very precious to me. I have a lot of happy memories of her cooking dinners and me sitting in the kitchen talking to her. The food was good, by the way. Or sitting and playing the original Spyro, or Mario 1 and Mario 3 on the NES. My mom did sit and play with me and talk to me, and she was there for me in many situations when I was young. I mean, granted, one would say that's what a mother does, but regardless of anything, I appreciate it. And the emotional bond I have with my mother, it means a lot to me, and I value her very much, and I love her very much. I spent a lot of my life very, very alone. Then again, every girlfriend or wife, or basically every woman I've ever been with, every relationship I've ever been with, everyone has cheated on me, and everything has gone poorly on that. My experiences with women have been so bad, I've decided in the future, if I ever date again, I'm just going to be gay. Because I am not going through another divorce, or any of those horrible things ever again. But I will say this. Had I never met my ex-wife, I would have never had a wife. I would have never had a family. I would never had a child. And I wanted a family and a marriage very badly. I wanted to be a father, and I wanted to be the best father I possibly could be. And I cherished every moment I spent with my son. from even before he was born. I was so happy. Even before he was born. I wanted to be everything for him. I wanted a father. I realized all the things that my parents had done that had hurt my feelings, and I wanted to make sure I didn't repeat any of those mistakes. In the end, though, he still wound up losing his father, and in the end, his family is a broken one, and he is definitely living a life and a future I did not envision for him on the day he was born. But I'm still grateful for him. I'm thankful to God for him every day. But I'm still thankful for that blessing. I know of my middle sister. Her family that she had some issues, and her eldest daughter spent most of her early childhood being raised by my parents before eventually be able to go back, but she's always had a room in both households. As for my eldest sister, she wanted very much to be a mother her whole life, and she struggled. She had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage, babies dying before they were even more than just 4 or 5 months. She also had 3 stillbirths. Children that were alive the day they were born, and then those kids died within an hour or even minutes of being born. Kevin, last of those stillbirths, half of the blood in his body pulled to one side of his body shortly after he was born. He was alive for a couple hours, and then he wound up looking like Zetsu from Naruto, where half of his body was completely pale white, drained of blood, and the other half, and again, vertical split by the way, the other half was black and purple and swollen with blood. He was buried in a tiny white porcelain coffin, barely 1 arm's length long. Watching a large number of people, including your mother and sisters, crying as a tiny coffin is buried, I felt very sad about that. She eventually, though, had a child that survived, and she was very happy about that. She did everything she could to be the best mother in the world she could be. And then, about a month, just shy of a month, she died of brain aneurysm. Just shy of a month before her child's first birthday, which she was super excited for, by the way. That birthday and all that. And then, then she died and became a vegetable for a couple days in a hospital, and then we had to bury her, and I felt very sad about that. I really need to stop going on tangents. I'm trying to just focus on the story. The first tangent is about fucking robots. And the second tangent is about how I'm very grateful to God for the blessing of being a father. Even though things didn't turn out the way I hoped, I'm still very thankful and happy and grateful to God for that. Let's continue the story. That was some pretty strong language at the end there. She realized very well that her words were an idealized view of what a mother should be. But even so, she was strongly resolved to protect her daughter, even if she had to become a demon. But that was her guilty conscience tormenting her. Today's been so long, so many things happened in one day, and we've been driven to a corner so thoroughly. I wonder if we have the right to greet tomorrow with the way we are now. There it is. I found it. It's the magic circle. Inside the book I've been flipping through, I had found the same magic circle that had been drawn on the second sheet of the letter. George and Nikki peered at it as well. This magic circle's name was the Third Magic Circle of Mars. The Hebrew written on it was from Psalms 77, verse 13 of the Old Testament. What God is so great as our God? The meaning of the magic circle was discord. Agitate internal divisions and cause the enemy to bring about their own downfall. Wait a sec. Seriously? Could there be a more fitting way to describe our current situation and mental state? We couldn't help but be stunned into silence. So, this letter was a trap. How did they place it here? There wasn't anyone in this room except for the 8 of us, right? Anyway, let's ignore how they got it in here for now. The culprit was after just one thing. They wanted to spread the seeds of doubt inside this impregnable room and use us to throw the sacrificial sheep out. In that case, they're after the people who went out of the room, who are probably already dead, because it's been hours, and I don't think they would wait for us to have a change of heart. Mom, what should we do? Those 4 are in danger. It wasn't surprised that Natsui remained unpleasantly silent. Even if this was all a trap by the culprit, even if the 4 who had been chased out of the room were in danger, it had nothing to do with the safety of the 4 people in here. And there was no way to prove the innocence of the 4 people we'd chased out. If we're willing to let them die, then we shouldn't leave this room no matter what, or else their sacrifice is in vain. Because at that point we sacrifice them for nothing. That way is safest. At that time, suddenly the piercing sound of a phone rang through the room, which shouldn't be happening because the phones and radios aren't working. It was the antique extension phone set out on the table in Grandfather's study. It had rung right after we started talking about the letter being a trap. It was natural we'd think of it as an SOS from the ones we'd chased out. But then Natsui spoke. Why a phone call? The phone should be broken down and unusable. That doesn't matter. If that's Maria calling for help. If the problem with the phones was the culprit's work in the first place, then this call is probably... With that one sentence, the ring of the phone, which had once sounded like a scream for help, now started to sound like a ghastly lure from some unknown person. Natsui hesitated over whether to pick up the receiver. Let's pick it up, Natsui. The phones might have been fixed for some reason. It could still be an urgent call from Maria-chan and the rest. That's right. And if it actually is a call from the culprit, bring it on. Why don't we listen to what they've got to say? It's just a phone call. No matter what they babble through the receiver, it's not like it's going to hurt you. If you don't pick it up, then I will. I will take it. Hello? I stretched out my hand to the receiver, but Aunt Natsui grabbed it before I could reach. We all held our breath, trying to figure out who the person on the other end of the phone was. But for a while, Aunt Natsui kept saying, hello? A silent phone call? There's no way Maria and the others would do something so creepy. Which means, could this phone call possibly really be? Natsui stopped repeating hello and strained her ears, because she thought she heard something far away on the other end of the receiver. What was that? Huh? Is someone singing? What do you mean, singing? I don't know. Faintly, from the other end of the phone, I can hear someone singing. I wonder what it could be. Give it a here for a sec. Hello? I half forced the receiver from the stunned Aunt Natsui's hand and pressed it against my ear. At first, I didn't hear anything, but because I had been told about it beforehand, I noticed. It sounded far away from the receiver, rather than someone speaking in a quiet voice, and it sounded like a girl singing a song. That voice did sound like Maria's, but that just made the situation even more inexplicable. At the very least, the one who had made the phone call hadn't been Maria. After all, Maria was singing some song far away from the receiver. In that case, the one who made the phone call should have been Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, or Dr. Danjo, and yet they weren't saying anything. Why? For what reason? The person who made this phone call. Who was it? Hey! Hello? Who is it? Answer me! Is that Maria singing? Answer me! What's happening? What is it? I don't know. All I can say is, this is probably a trap, and Maria is in trouble. Aunt Natsui took the receiver again, but after yelling into it several more times, she realized that she wasn't getting anywhere and hung up. After that, she dialed quickly. Then she clicked her tongue. That's right, if the phones are working, we should be able to reach the police, but judging by Aunt Natsui's reaction, the outside telephone line still didn't connect. Let's go. Even if we know it might be a trap, we have to go. Yeah, definitely. Jessica, Aunt Natsui, stay here. When Aniki and I tried to dash out, Aunt Natsui stopped us. Hold it. I cannot let you go alone. I will go too. Jessica, wait here. What, so I'll be the only one left out? Nice try, but I'm going to. Yeah, it might be better that way. If the goal of that phone call was to split us up further, it wouldn't be a good idea to leave someone to watch this room. There's no time to argue. Let's all go. Aunt Natsui raised the rifle high and took the lead. I couldn't go unarmed myself. I found a 3-pronged candle stand and readied it. Although the pins on it, used to fit candles, were short, it was almost like a 3-pronged spear. By the way, in the video game Kid Chameleon, in the stage The Hills of the Warrior, the title screen of that, there's a name written on the background inside that video game. Then the 4 of us left the study. Hold on, I want to look outside. I'm going to go to the bathroom, look out the window. Also probably pee. My back hurts. One more day of work and 2-day weekend. I'm back. The weather's very calm out there at the moment, but it was definitely raining earlier. So it probably rained a bit hard for a moment, but yeah, it's currently it's wet out there, but it's not currently raining. Then the 4 of us left the study. We left the study, which should have been the safest place inside the mansion. By doing this, we had been lured out, even though we had barricaded ourselves in a safe closed room. Perhaps we were doing exactly the same thing Grandfather had done when he disappeared from that room. Maria! Where are you? Answer me! I listened closely but didn't hear anything. The mansion was vast, and since the passing typhoon was making its last stand, the sound of the rain was even noisier than before. Maria Chan said she wanted to watch TV in the parlor, right? Let's try going downstairs. That's right. Let's try there. Everyone, be mindful of your surroundings. Yeah! With Aunt Natsui in the center, her rifle readied and her finger on the trigger. We moved in a group, our backs together, checking our surroundings in all directions. I think I might get some Mexican food here shortly. From an actual Mexican restaurant. And I don't mean Taco Bell. It was just as though the magic of that magic circle designed to spread discord had worked. We had split up and furthermore had been dragged out into dangerous territory. In other words, even now, we were doing just what the culprit wanted us to do. This was a separate world, where it wouldn't be odd for anything to suddenly occur. Aunt Natsui nervously pointed the barrel of the gun at every dark spot and shadow. It felt like the motion was out of fear, rather than caution, but the rifle she held in her hands should have been a trump card that the culprit feared. You know, I've been thinking. It wouldn't be impossible to stick one of those ice picks into someone's chest like in Cannon-kun's case, but splitting the skull and sticking them into the forehead, like in my parents' case, wouldn't be that easy. You think the culprit had that kind of animal strength? They probably had some kind of weapon, a device that could shoot, or pound in those ice... A fucking crossbow? Are you fucking kidding me? That handle was too short to be driven in that deeply by human strength alone. Either way, they have enough force to break through a skull. I heard Cannon's wound reached as far as his lungs. If you happen to see your opponent, don't go forwards. You mustn't move away from my back. Just how sinister and frightening was the weapon that could shoot those creepy ice picks? It's a fucking crossbow! And could I do anything to combat it with just this candle stand in my hand? Possibly deflect it. I mean, they're both metal. In the first murder, the culprit probably assaulted all four of our parents at once, as they discussed the inheritance problem in the dining hall. And there were four of us here now. Apparently I wasn't the only person thinking this. George and Nikki, Jessica, and, of course, Aunt Natsui were stretching their senses to their utmost limit in the highest and worst state of tension, slowly advancing one step, then another. Ah, what have we done? Because of the seeds of doubt spread by that one letter, we threw Maria and the rest in the middle of this terrifying world. We finally reached the first floor. The parlor was just across the hall. When we listened carefully, we could hear it faintly, Maria's eerie singing voice. She wasn't singing naturally as though she were in a good mood. She was singing mechanically, like she was at a graduation ceremony, and she had been ordered to. The song she sang was just a common folk song, one that everyone has probably sung in school at one time or another. But why that? In the middle of the night, alone, with all her heart, over and over, why? That definitely sounds like a hostage situation. Right after leaving the study, we had called out in loud voices asking Maria where she was, but this time no one said even a single word. We hid our breaths in the sound of our footsteps and intensely focused on our surroundings to the point of being completely high-strung. We stepped forward. The door to the parlor was closed, but we could hear Maria's singing voice through it. Aunt Natsui put her hand on the handle of the doorknob when George and Nikki stopped her. I'll open the door. Aunt Natsui, Battler-kun, ready your weapons. Understood. Take care. They might attack as soon as we open it. George, Nissan, watch yourself. Sure, I mean, that's why he's opening the door. Then, I'll open it. Huh? He tried to open it, but immediately felt the hard resistance of the lock. Natsui took the bundle of keys from her pocket and gave them to George. There were about 10 keys, and none of us had a clue which was which. Because of this, George had to fumble around loudly and test several of the keys. Since we had hidden our footsteps preparing to make a surprise attack on the room, this felt almost fatal. The whole time we could hear Maria's voice from the parlor singing the same song over and over. It was like a broken, crazy cassette tape. We'd been in that room almost constantly since morning. All the frightening things had occurred outside that room. That had left us with the impression that only this room was safe. That baseless impression was quickly falling apart. It's open. Thank you. George-kun, Jessica, move behind me. Aunt Natsui, let's jump in at the same time and split up in different directions. If we just stand around after opening the door, those ice picks might fly right through the center. I agree. Ready? I really wish I could say no. I readied myself. If they're going to be throwing ice picks, I'll whack them with this candle stand. Go! Aunt Natsui and I rammed into the door before flying into the parlor, quickly splitting up left and right and searching the parlor for someone who might be waiting for us. But what our eyes landed upon was an incredibly strange sight. The parlor was stained with blood. This place where we spent almost the entire day, where we pressed in together to protect ourselves from some unknown malice, had been stained with fresh blood and had become an ocean of blood. On the floor lay Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, and Dr. Nanjo, their entire bodies stained bright red with the blood. But the only way we could identify them was by their clothes. That was because, that's right, this is how the whole tragedy started. Their faces, just like our smashed-up parents in the shed, you couldn't tell where their eyes stopped and their noses began. It was as though they had been rudely plunged their faces into tomato pot pies, all squished up. Wah! And that wasn't all. Their bodies had other wounds. It was those demon ice picks. They were in Genji-san's stomach, Dr. Nanjo's thigh, no, his knee. That's right, of course, it's his knee. In the epitaph, the sixth was the stomach, the sixth twilight was the stomach, and on the seventh twilight, the knee was gouged. So after seeing one of them stuck near Kumasawa Bachan's calf, I couldn't help but masochistically laughing. Haha, that's right. On the sixth twilight, gouged stomach and kill. On the seventh twilight, gouged the knee and kill. On the eighth twilight, gouged the leg and kill. Now even the eighth twilight is over. And the next one, the ninth twilight, what was it again? Maria was there. She was facing the wall in the inner part of the room, standing stock still, completely alone. She faced away from this horrible scene, standing by the wall, singing her song over and over. There was nothing else in the room, just the corpses of the three who had been brutally killed, and the phone receiver, which was still off its hook, proving that this was the room the call had come from. Just that, and Maria, her back to the scene, as she kept on singing while facing the wall. We couldn't even scream at this bizarre scene. We could only stare, shocked, with our mouths hanging loosely open. Maria! Jessica called out to her, but Maria showed no reaction. Alone, she kept singing on and on. We had come here trying to save Maria from some approaching danger, so now that we had found her, we should have been running up to Maria, hugging her, joyous that she was safe. And yet not one of us could do that. Everyone thought it, but they couldn't say it. After all, because, that's right, even if that's crazy, no, it couldn't be. Maria, stop singing! Are you listening? At some point, Natsui and I had pointed our weapons at Maria's back. I yelled at Maria in a violent voice, but there was no reaction. She just kept singing. With the candle stand still ready, I ran up to her and violently slammed my hand down on her shoulder. Then I pulled on her shoulder, forcing her to turn around. Whoa! Ooh! Maria's small body was quickly pulled down and fell. And as though unhappy at having her singing interrupted, Maria looked into my face with her usual expression. Even in this gruesome situation, she was just like normal. Maria, what is this? Who did it? Ooh? Beatrice? Cut that crap! I threw the candle stand I'd been holding against the wall. The violence of that reckless sound should have gone straight into Maria's heart, but Maria's expression didn't change at all. Quit it, Battler-kun. Maria-chan, this time you should have seen the face of the culprit who killed these three. Was the culprit the same Beatrice who gave you the letter? Ooh? Beatrice? Well, in that case, it's certain. There is a 19th person. Beatrice does exist. Then Maria, will you at least tell me this much? How did they kill these three people? What did they use to kill them in such a brutal way? I don't know. How could you not know? It happened in this room. Are you trying to tell me you were so absorbed in singing that you didn't notice? Calm down, Battler-kun. Maria-chan, talk to me. Okay. George Aniki, as he always did, crouched down next to Maria so that the eyes met and talked to her very kindly. Maria-chan, why were you facing the wall and singing? Ooh? Beatrice said to face the wall and keep singing for a long time. Ooh. So did Beatrice come here? Were Genji-san and the rest still alive then? Ooh? Everyone came into the parlor together and sat down. Genji-san made sure to lock the door. It was locked when we got here. But then how did Beatrice get into the parlor? Ooh, Beatrice is a witch, so locks don't matter. She turned into butterflies and came through the crack in the door. Huh? Calmly joking at a time like this. Like hell that happened. What are you saying? You can't believe it. You can't believe it? That's why I didn't want to say it. No matter how I say it, you won't believe. But Beatrice is a witch. She can do anything with her miraculous magic. That's why Beatrice doesn't care whether her door is locked or not. And then, after Beatrice appeared, what happened to everyone? Beatrice talked to us. She said grandfather's study was protected by a powerful force, and she couldn't enter no matter what she did. So she told us she'd select 3 sacrifices from the 4 people in the parlor. Everyone said no way. Kumasawa-san kept saying no way, no way. But Beatrice chose, and when she did, Beatrice said I'd be fine. Why do you think? It's because of the scorpion charm with the 5th magic circle of marks. The one Battler used to pray for my safety. The one he put his feelings into. Because of that power, Beatrice couldn't do anything to me, and me alone. So she decided to use the other 3 as sacrifices, and after that Beatrice spoke. Come face the wall and sing a song for me. You will sing lots and lots of songs, so no matter what happens, no matter what you hear, you won't hear, you won't hear, you won't know. You won't hear, you won't know. Come sing lots of fun songs for me. So I was singing the whole time, over and over, so I didn't hear anything, didn't know anything, and then all of you came. Ooh. Are you asking us to believe that? You think we're stupid? Then who will you suspect this time? Will you suspect me? Gonna try killing me right here? Even if you do that, Beatrice won't stop existing. Now, the 8th twilight is over and Beatrice will revive. Are you serious? I've had enough of that talk. As if witches could exist. As if I'd let myself get tricked. I won't accept it. Beatrice doesn't exist. I definitely won't accept it. So I won't let her exist. I won't let her revive. The legend will remain a legend forever. I won't acknowledge something like that. Quit it, Battler. It's not like Maria killed them or let them die. Beatrice came and Maria had to obey. Was unable to resist. Huh? Natsui? She isn't here. Huh? What? Mom, where did she go? Just now, she left by herself, reading a letter. A letter? That makes sense. The culprit must be so exhilarated now that we've reached the 8th twilight. They must have left a letter so that they could brag even more. We were so wrapped up in questioning Maria that we forgot to look for a letter. But even as well armed as she was, why had she left the room by herself in this dangerous mansion after reading it? Jessica tried to chase after her and tugged at the handle of the door, but it resisted strangely, wouldn't open. Mom! What's going on? Open up! Open up! It was only natural. Natsui had picked up the candle stand, which Battler had thrown at the wall, and which had fallen to the floor. She had then skillfully wedged it between the doorknobs on the double doors, like a bolt, holding them closed. The intricate design of the candle stand caused it to get caught solidly, and it really did make a sturdy seal on the door. The tragic scream of a daughter for her mother. Did it reach Natsui's ears or not? Are you going to shoot the painting? Natsui's figure was. alone in the entrance hall. It was the place decorated by the portrait of Beatrice. Natsu threw down Beatrice's last letter, the one she had read in the parlor, readied her rifle again, and in a voice that rang clear, yelled in the massive space that was the entrance hall. I am Ushiromiya Natsui, representative of the Ushiromiya family. Show yourself, golden witch Beatrice. The entrance hall was dimly lit. Other than a faint light which shone on the center of the room, everything was blotted out by jet black darkness. In that darkness, butterflies, glittering in gold, squirmed, twinkled, and sneered. Natsui gave one more huge gulp, and pointed the cold barrel of the gun at the gold butterflies. So you have finally shown yourself. I still can't believe it, that something like you really exists. But that isn't a problem. Both I, who bear the title representative to the Ushiromiya family, and you who claim to succeed the headship of the Ushiromiya family, are here right now. At this point, whether you are a witch or not is a trivial matter. Come, let us settle this. Which of us will truly succeed the Ushiromiya family? I, Ushiromi Natsui, or you, Beatrice? Allow me to respectfully accept your request for a duel. The gold butterfly slowly formed a human shape, which walked into the dim light. Natsui readied the rifle and glared. The witch raised her golden staff overhead and laughed. Natsui's finger slowly squeezed the trigger. And go! Battler made an all-out dash to the door and rammed into it, crushing the candle stand that had been barring it and making it possible for a big gap to be opened in the door. He kept kicking the candle stand through the gap, and the door was finally released. At that time, they heard it. They certainly heard the crisp sound of gunfire ring out once. Mom! Mom! Jessica-chan, you mustn't run off by yourself. Was that the sound of a gun just now? Did Aunt Natsui shoot? At whom? At the culprit? The noise had come from the entrance hall, and the entrance hall looked like a stage, like the heroine of a tragedy on the ground and bathed in light. Arrayed in the beautiful beauty of that silence, Aunt Natsui lay face up, crumpled on the floor. Half crazed, Jessica ran up to Aunt Natsui. Doesn't she still have the scorpion charm, though? And the fucking mirror. On Aunt Natsui's forehead, it was almost as though a sparkling shard of pigeon blood, ruby, had been placed there. Does Beatrice play fucking Halo? Like, is she really good at FPS games? And from it, one stream of blood makeup passed by her eye and began to traverse her face. The faint smell of gunpowder smoke came from the barrel of the rifle Aunt Natsui still grasped. Huh? Then she shot herself in the forehead? Why? Mom. Yeah. I don't get it. Well, we're down to 4 people. I don't get it. Why did Aunt Natsui run away alone? And why did she shoot through her own forehead? Maria-chan, Aunt Natsui left the room after reading a letter, right? There's no letter here. Damn. What did Adatsui read? And why was she lured out here? I don't know. Who cares about that? What the hell? Why did she kill herself? Why did she leave me all alone? Jessica clung to her mother's corpse, crying earnestly. My body was consumed with anger and I didn't know what to do with it. And I snatched the rifle from Natsui's hand. I spun around, pointing the barrel of the gun into the darkness on all sides, as though I was pointing a light from a lighthouse, trying to find the culprit. George and Nikki, even in this situation, was trying to calmly figure something out, but that might have been a fruitless effort. And only Maria was completely indifferent. So is this all that's supposed to be some kind of predetermined fate? No, that's not it. This is all a prelude to a wonderful world. The door to the Golden Land will finally open. On the 9th twilight the witch shall revive, and none shall be left alive. And on the 10th twilight, at the journey's end, you shall attain the power of the Golden Land's treasure, once and for the last time. With this, everything is over, Beatrice. Congratulations, congratulations! So lead me to the Golden Land you told me of. Right now. There, all of the dead will be revived, and even lost love will be restored. So in Maria's eyes, it's just as though all of today's tragedies didn't happen. It's as though all the time she spent deprived of love never happened. Stop it. What's so fun? What's to be congratulated? There were 18 people on this island. 14 are dead. Only the 4 of us are left. I'm definitely not gonna die. Until the night is over, no, until the typhoon passes, and the seagulls gather again at the harbor. I'm definitely not gonna die. I'll stay alive no matter what. Hee. Give it up, Battler. Guns are useless against witches. Survival and all that stuff doesn't matter because it's over. The journey has already ended. See, look at the clock. Huh? The clock? Hearing those words, I looked at my wristwatch. Both needles were almost touching near the top. Very soon it will be 12 o'clock at night. In other words, 24 o'clock. When you think about it, isn't 24 o'clock a strange time? Or 0 o'clock, depending on how you want to write it. It can be called 24, or it can also be called 0. Yeah, that's what I just said. It's the hour at the culmination of the previous day, and at the same time, it's hour 0 of the next day begins. Beatrice. Maria suddenly called out happily and ran towards the darkness. It was almost as though Beatrice was somewhere in the darkness, and Maria was running up to her. As Jessica hugged her mother's corpse, as George and Nikki stood there confused, I looked down the barrel of the rifle, gazing into the darkness. The space in front of Beatrice's portrait lay in that direction, and the thing Maria was running up to was the portrait's subject. You've got to be kidding me. This is just impossible. Like I'd fall for something like this. Witches don't exist. I won't accept it. Something like you shouldn't exist, because this is a human world. You think I can accept something that's not human? I definitely won't accept it. When I pulled hard on the rifle's lever, the cartridge was ejected, fell on the floor, and a new cartridge was loaded. Then I sighted the witch down the barrel. Maria turned around. Still clinging to the golden witch, she turned around. Didn't I tell you it was meaningless? Mere lead bullets are meaningless against Beatrice. Humans are so stupid, aren't they? I won't accept the existence of witches. Who are you? Just try moving one step. Just try moving one finger. I'll blast you away. Giggle, 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 cackle, 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 ha 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 ha. As the witches laughed. Even the large clock in the hall joined in on their laughter. It was probably telling us that the time was 24 o'clock. It was both a tone telling us that we had reached the culmination of this day, and a tone informing us that all had returned to nothing. The rule that the witch would win when time ran out had already been revealed. Battler, George Nichan, and Jessica. The journey has ended, and the witch has revived. See? And none shall be left alive. The witch shall praise the wise and bestow 4 treasures. One shall be all the gold from the Golden Land. One shall be the resurrection of all the dead souls. One shall be the resurrection of the love that was lost. And one shall be to put the witch to sleep for all time. Sleep peacefully, my beloved witch Beatrice. Click. The storm passed, and the leaden clouds that had enshrouded the island for so long cleared away. From the rifts between the clouds, sunbeams shone, and yesterday's storm seemed like a lie. Just as someone had wished, the seagulls returned to the harbor once again, and let their lively cries be heard. Afterwards, the police came and conducted an investigation of the scene. The corpses of the children, who were thought to have survived to the very end, were never found. However, because of the body parts that were discovered and the unimaginably gruesome nature of the scene, the police were forced to conclude that the chance of survival for any of the 18 and the children seemed hopelessly dim. Just how gruesome was the banquet of the witch, and how beautiful was the Golden Land. They were the only ones who got to hear the tale. No tales were told to the humans who arrived, and the banquet is over. The best they could do was imagine what might have happened during those 2 days. However, the witch was fickle. She made a point of leaving behind this tale, which didn't need to be heard, and it was allowed to spread. Then, many years later, a strange wine bottle that had drifted on the waves, Frederick and Birkenstell, to the pier of a neighboring island was pulled out by some fishermen. Inside it was a thin, tightly rolled notebook fragment, written upon in cramped small letters. Written there was his tale. Through this notebook fragment, people will finally learn the truth of the mysterious and riddle-filled 2-day period that started on October 4th, 1986. This incident was later called by many names such as Rakajima mass murders or the 18 killings of Rakajima through dilettantes of the world knew the world legend murder. Lovers of the occult claimed it was all the result of immoral, so sealed-off island established different interpretations, spread far away. However, not interpretation approach truth. Furthermore, while a notebook fragment describes it does not reveal the truth, or perhaps even the writer didn't even know what the truth was. According to the writer, her name was Ushiromiya Maria. Incidentally, as a result of all the police investigations, part of Maria's body, a piece of her jaw, was discovered. It was one of the rare instances where a corpse was identified thanks to the dental records. As a gruesome scene, there have been many parts belonging to purple, say, jaw, extreme force. Because the jaw had been separated from its body, the police described his body found. So, conclude tale, section, body, Maria, by the time you have read this, I will probably be dead, although there may be or may not be a corpse. You are made aware of this. Please find out the truth. That's my only wish. Ushiromiya Maria. To this very day, the truth of the witch's legend, serial murders, has not been brought to light. Does kind of remind me how the end of each of the parts of the first game, Legend of the Golden Witch. Result: Ushiromiya Kraus died in chosen Rudolph, chosen key by the key, pierced through the forehead, stake of Asmodeus, stake of Beelzebub, Mammon, Satan, Lucifer, Leviathan, Belphegor. Okay, the witch Beatrice revived, finally opens the door of the Golden Land. Natsui, witch praised her nobility and grant her the honor of a duel. George acknowledged the existence of the witch and prostrated himself. The witch invited him to Golden Land. Acknowledged existence, prostrated herself. She acknowledged prostrated on land. Battler, will the witch invite this man who denied her existence to Golden Man? Missing on the 10th twilight. The witch will praise the wise, bestow for golden treasure. After all the large amount of gold they had desired, it would have been out of their grasp. George lost his fiancée. Jessica chose the boy she had liked and lost. Maria lost the love of her mother. Sleep peacefully, Beatrice. Let nothing disturb you ever again. The winner of the Golden Witch is Beatrice. Time ran out before one of the 18 people could solve the riddle of the gold. All 18 died. When the seagulls cried, none were left alive. It would have been nice if it auto-scrolled a little bit slower so I didn't have to read faster than I could actually properly enunciate words. Addition, new features. Golden Witch has prepared a gift for you in the commemoration of your stay. You can find these new features on the title screen. Okay. Cool. It's nice and all. Okay, we finished episode 1 of this very long story. Tea party, you say? You've done well to make it this far. Have you enjoyed your stay in Rakanjima? The Golden Witch has granted you an invitation to her tea party. We hope that you choose to attend. Sure thing. Episode 1, Tea Party. Purgatorio. So we're going to get Dante's Inferno references throughout this story. Hey everyone, congrats on finishing Umineko no Naku Koro ni. Man, I still don't have a clue what was going on when the story ended. So just what happened? Was that basically the bad ending where time runs out before the culprit gets exposed? Ooh, definitely a bad ending. Ooh. That's right. Beatrice's letter, which Maria Chan read on the first day, did tell us in advance to solve the riddle of the epitaph. We were all so busy trying to protect ourselves and to look for the culprit that we didn't even take a shot at it. That's right. If we had actually tried to solve the riddle, maybe things would have ended differently. I wonder about that. Shannon-chan, you did a good job too. You don't have to be our waitress and serve tea. After all, this is a rap party. As a group of people who met a horrible fate, let's all get along and lick each other's wounds. Lick, lick, lick. Speaking of a horrible fate, Shannon beats the rest of us hand-downs, doesn't she? She was such a beautiful character, so I thought she'd definitely survive until the very end. But she was killed right in the beginning, and on top of that, what was it? Half of her face was smashed, right? That's the worst. That was my role, so there was no way around it. Nissan? Nay-san, it's nothing for you to worry about. Judging by the last epilogue, even Milady and the rest of them met an extremely tragic end. Aha, it seems so. I think I remember seeing that horrible picture kinda like my entire body had been eaten apart and dismembered. Speaking of which, don't you think Cannon's last moments were the coolest? Even though he had the tables turned on him, it was a showdown with the culprit, right? It's a whole bunch better than our confusing last moments, right? Though in the end, I was unable to get a solid hit in. Still, I think Cannon-kun's death was a big hint. After all, because of that, the existence of the 19th person was made clear. That's right. At that time, everyone's location was obvious. So, it was impossible for anyone other than some unknown 19th person to kill Cannon. Ooh, I said it was Beatrice from the beginning over and over. Ooh. I don't want to believe it, but that does prove the culprit was a witch calling herself Beatrice. That's right. There were many strange things that happened that a human couldn't do. Ooh, only a witch could do things like murdering Aunt Ava in that closed room. A human couldn't do it. Ooh. Not only is the existence of the 19th person clear, but it's also obvious that this person holds a power that humans can't even imagine. In that case, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling this person Beatrice. We probably met at the very end. Met with the Golden Witch. Like I kept saying, Beatrice exists. It all went bad because no one ever believed. Ooh, even one of her witch friends says that miracles won't occur if you don't believe. Ooh. That's right. Beatrice-sama is generous to those who respect her. It seems to me that Maria-sama was never a target of Beatrice-sama's wrath up until the very end, despite the horrible crimes that occurred one after another. Well, Maria believed in Beatrice from the very beginning. But if that's the case, how do you explain why you and the rest were all killed? You guys believed in Beatrice just as much, right? Beatrice-sama probably had her reasons. If the song of the epitaph represented Beatrice-sama's resurrection ceremony, many sacrifices were needed. He must simply have been designated to be one of those. Shannon-chan, you met a horrible end. At the very least, I wish your death could have been more peaceful and pretty. Well, it's not like it hurt. Anyway, right now, I'm perfectly fine, so don't worry. After seeing him stroke Shannon's cheek, which had been crushed during the story, everyone laughed out loud, smiling. Well, it feels a bit weird saying this, but I was sure this story would fit into the standard mystery genre. I am a bit surprised to find out that it's a fantasy. After all, a Western mansion shut away from the outside world on an isolated island with an inheritance problem on everyone's minds. It sounds like a typical mystery novel to me. Ooh, it's not fantasy. Beatrice exists. Ooh. Yes, we understand. Beatrice-sama does exist. That's right. Beatrice-sama does exist. I hate to admit it, but I've got no choice. Let's call that a video, guys. I really do need to make short videos. Oh, right. Well, that's not good. Huh. Alright, I was gonna save the game. Okay. We'll come back to this. I'm gonna go to bed. Well, actually, I'm gonna get some food and then bed. So. Almost 3 hours. I really need to make short videos.